All right, everyone, you are now streaming live on YouTube.
Thank you, Pat.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I was away for a minute, but welcome. I think we'll give it a few more minutes here. We are already streaming live to YouTube. I don't know if we're up on the webpage yet or not, but let's give it a couple more minutes for other people to log in. And I will start checking off to see who all is here. Mike, are you on right now?
Yep, I'm here.
So Patrick Roth is with us today. He was missing yesterday. And while we wait for another couple people to log on, do you think it would be a good idea for somebody to fill him in on what happened yesterday?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Does anybody want to volunteer to fill Patrick in on what happened yesterday? Just a brief synopsis.
I can.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Welcome back, Patrick. Yesterday, we listened to Idaho and Wyoming and how they manage elk and wildlife, do their counts compared to how Montana does. We did a structured brainstorming event, and we came up with 4 small groups and 4 issue statements that I believe we're going to dig into today and kind of make it into one issue statement on recommendations for the department to manage elk moving forward. We highlighted the commonalities, the challenges, and what elk mean to the people in Montana.
Excuse me, Lindsay, I can't hear anything anybody's saying. Do I have something done wrong here?
You might, Ed. Is it just quiet or can you not hear anything? Okay, Ed is having some issues. Thank you, Mark, for that update. I think that was a very good synopsis of what we did yesterday. Let me try and get Ed's sound here figured out, but thank you.
Can you type a message to him and ask if he has his volume turned up?
I'll try that. Brian already asked him. Maybe I'll. Can you hear us now, Ed?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, good. Let's see. Okay, we are now streaming online. Dan Vermillion told me he would be a couple minutes late, but he is still on his way. So trying to look at who else we might be missing. And as I'm trying to count, everybody keeps moving around. So good morning, Justin.
Good morning.
Okay, Mike, I think you're good to go ahead and get started. We're a couple minutes after 9. And like I said, I know Dan said he was going to be a minute late. So I don't think we necessarily need to wait for him if you want to go ahead and get started.
Okay. Welcome back, folks. It's good to see you again. I salute your courage for showing up for yet another day of this process. Pat, it's good to have you with us. And so if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate to ask them. What I'd like to do to start off today is, everyone's had a chance to mull on yesterday's events, sleep on them a little bit, and I'd like to invite anybody that wants to share those thoughts with the group to go ahead and do so. Don't be shy.
I'm just going to say, I think we worked well as a group yesterday. This is new to me, and it seems to be working pretty well, or going smoothly.
Yeah, I was going to add, I kind of like the smaller groups. It seems easier to talk with people and figure things out that way.
I do have some points. I don't know what I missed yesterday. I've talked to a bunch of ranchers and outfitter and some different stuff. Has anybody brought up any points yet, or are we still not there yet?
That's a good question, Pat.
Here in 101, I talked to some of the ranchers and, pardon?
I was going to say that's a good question, and we did cover a lot of ground yesterday. Does anybody in the group want to address Pat's question?
Could you say his question? I was having a big lag on my end.
Yeah, Pat, just so you know, it looks like your connection is a little bit slow, and so that means that you're lagged and coming across. It sounds like you're talking real slowly, and so if we end up stepping on you or something like that, it's nothing intentional. It's just that it looks like that your video and your audio are lagged to us. But to answer your question, Mark, Pat was asking about points that might have been brought up yesterday. So he's talked to a lot of ranchers, hunters, and outfitters. And so he was asking about, how much points relative to their perspectives have been brought up so far.
I can fill him in on a little bit from what I remember. We had concerns of financial loss and elk depredation affecting people's livelihood with crop damage, fence damage, and potential disease transmission. Talking or discussing it amongst the group, there was a perceived lack of opportunity amongst sportsmen Access. I'll see if I can get Dan's definition of high concentrations of elk in unwanted areas and potential ranching for wildlife, making it more appealing for elk to be on a ranch and increase high numbers where the neighbors don't have any tolerance for them.
And Pat, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the issue statement that the group has come up with, but the whole point of the issue statement is to capture all of the perspectives and challenges in elk management in Montana to help understand why coming up with an elk management plan is challenging and difficult. I don't know if you've had a chance. Right now we have 4 draft issue statements developed by 4 smaller groups, and we're going to continue to work on them today. So does that make sense?
Yes, I haven't got to see them yet, and most of my issues are single unit issues.
Okay. One suggestion, when I'm doing this from home, I have a pretty slow internet connection too. It might help if you turned your video off. I think your audio might stream a little bit more smoothly. We'll miss your smiling face, but it might be able to help you weigh in.
That helping?
Yeah, I think it did.
Should I cover the issues I came up with or wait until later in the meeting?
I'd suggest we're going to be breaking out into small groups here. And so you're going to find out a lot about the ground that's already been covered. And if you don't feel like we're covering a lot of the things that you're thinking about, then we can talk about them after the small group breakout.
Okay.
Okay, great. So further reflections on yesterday. What kept you awake at night last night, except for the fact, boy, this process really is fun?
I'll make a comment. I thought the drafts contained a lot of, we actually did a pretty good job of getting most of the concerns in most of the drafts. And I think it's, at this point in time, it's a matter of boiling those down a little bit, refining the narrative and moving on. I think we've got a lot there to work with.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the thing that I was really impressed by yesterday is just the recognition of the complexity of this issue and the recognition that just because something works, say in the Blackfoot, doesn't mean it's going to work out by Jordan. And just understanding that the plan has to have the flexibility necessary to allow local wildlife managers to work with landowner and sportsmen to hopefully address issues, put out little fires where they occur. And I think it seemed like everybody was really on board and agreed that it's just not a simple issue and that we need to provide flexibility because Montana is an awfully big state.
Other folks, I'd really like to hear from you.
I spent a lot of time thinking last night on how I personally can continue to check my personal biases and assumptions moving forward. I think yesterday was pretty, it was pretty friendly. We were all working pretty well together, but we're going to start drilling down onto some more complex elements of this process. And so just asking myself, how do I continue to have that spirit of camaraderie and collaboration moving forward as we get a little bit more contentious? I didn't come up with an answer in case you were wondering.
What do other folks think about that?
I had a question.
Sure.
How specific are we supposed to be in the what we're doing right now? I just know yesterday we spent a little bit of time in our group You know, we wrote down stakeholders and then we're like, do we need to specify who that is? How detailed do we need to get with that right now?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and this might address some of your thoughts, Marcus, that, you know, this is, in developing an issue statement, this is not a time for, you know, trying to say a particular view is right or wrong. We're just trying to capture all the views. And particularly, we're trying to capture the views that make coming up with an elk management plan in Montana difficult. All right. And so, you know, yesterday we outlined a lot of complexities, and we don't want to drill down to the point where we're talking about a particular hunting district or a particular portion of Montana. The elk plan is going to be broader than that. So what are the perspectives, okay, within that frame, within that breadth, that need to be captured so we understand why it's difficult to do this? So, you know, you might have somebody that just completely disagrees with you, but they need to be heard and their perspective needs to be included in the issue statement. And really, it costs you nothing to acknowledge that other people see things differently from what I do. And, you know, we're not trying to debate at this point who's right or who's wrong. We're trying to hear each other out and just capture the perspective of different people in the issue statement. Does that answer your question, Allie?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess my answer would be just writing stakeholders in an issue statement would be fine. You wouldn't need to get super specific on individuals or whatever.
Well, I think, so this is going to be up to you, but I'll tell you my perspective. You know, I think from what I've seen in wildlife management in Montana, there's always disagreement among stakeholders. All right. And that's okay. You know, that means people care about wildlife in Montana. But just saying there's disagreement among stakeholders doesn't necessarily help us understand why that's a problem. Okay. So there are some disagreements out there that really have impeded going forward on this. Okay. Or will make it difficult to go forward. And I think it's important for the group to be forthright about that. Okay. Because if we come up with something vague now, the recommendations you're going to come up with later, the guiding principles, are going to be vague. And so those are not particularly useful in developing an elk management plan. You're going to want to make specific recommendations. So glossing over some of the different perspectives among the stakeholders may not be the best thing to do at this point. Yeah, Dan.
So Mike, just kind of following up on that, I mean, if we're getting down into specifics as it relates to elk management, I mean, when you read the elk management plan and you listen to a lot of the discussions, the population objectives system kind of permeates throughout, and it's kind of what we're always managing towards. Does this group include the charge to consider or assess whether the population objective metric is the right one for managing elk across the landscape in Montana, or is that too specific?
That's a good question. I guess it depends on what you mean by appropriate. I think that's part of the problem, is that you have different people with different perspectives on what's appropriate. And so actually, you know, uncertainty or disagreement about the objectives is part of the issue.
Well, and as I thought about it last night, I think that, you know, the objectives can work if we don't go 15 years between changing them, right? I mean, 2000. And so I just wondered, you know, there's a lot of stuff, as I read through everybody's comments last night, there's a lot of stuff in there about the importance of a 5-year review or regular updating. And I wondered if that is, you know, people feel like if you have a 5-year review and it's mandatory, not that we have the ability to make it mandatory, but that it is mandatory, that maybe that population objective system doesn't need to be reinvented, and that it can work as long as it's regularly updated.
Well, I think that's an important perspective and something to talk about with the group members. you know, the thing that popped into my head, holy cow, Dan, are you wearing a Bobcat shirt? You're muted.
I'll just say it for him then. Go Bobcats.
No. That's just wildly inappropriate. Anyway, if you're gonna talk about a review, what kind of review would satisfy the different stakeholders? And what does that review mean? And we don't have to define that necessarily now. That will come in the next step. But again, this kind of goes back to the idea of, you know, right now what we have is a really nice skeleton, and we want to put some flesh on it. Okay. And so I encourage people to say what they think. I would discourage you from wanting to dispute what other people think. There's no need for that. It really doesn't help the process. The process isn't intended for that. But hearing out what other people have to say and making sure that that perspective is captured in the issue statement along with your perspective is what's really important.
Hey, Mike, this is Dan again. Are we, in like other structured decision-making processes that I've been involved with, are we working towards a product where we have 100% agreement on the terms, or is that like on whatever it is we produce, or is that the sort of thing where we have to agree before we move forward, or we're not quite that specific?
That's a good question. There's nothing about this process that requires consensus. But honestly, for these first two steps, there should be no reason that we can't all agree on the content of the issue statement and the guiding principles. Okay, it shouldn't exclude anybody. Everybody should feel like their perspective is adequately represented along with others. So if we don't get to a consensus thing, then, you know, we may have a bigger issue that we'd need to talk about.
Thank you.
You bet.
Mike, I'd make a comment if I could, please.
Please.
Yeah, in relation to the objective discussion that swirled around yesterday and starting this morning, I've got a couple thoughts there. I already think there's quite a bit of flexibility in there within the biologists and the 2-year season setting. They can make recommendations to the commission and take those up there and represent those thoughts at the commission meeting, which to me bridges the time frame till the next plan or the next objective. And then the second point is I think it's pretty dangerous to go down the road of political appointees being able to set that objective. I think that the actual final setting of that objective needs to be with the legislature, to people that are accountable to the voters. It seems a dangerous path to me for political appointees to have the power to completely set that objective.
Well, that's a couple of good points, Ed, and let me go in reverse order. Is it within the power of this group or the decision makers that you are advising to change whether the commission or the legislature makes the ultimate decisions on objectives?
I don't think it is. It's
Okay.
with the legislature right now.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, I think this is Dan. I think maybe Lindsay could weigh in here because I believe the population objectives are set by the department, approved by the commission in collaboration, based on public comment. And that's a relatively recent bill from like 2003 or 5, Debbie Barrett's bill, House Bill 342, that specifically mandated how we set objectives and what we managed to. So I'm not sure. I think we're probably stuck with that. I mean, stuck or whatever, maybe not the right word, but I think that is the framework with which the legislature has told us we have to work as a department.
Yeah, Dan, that's my understanding of objectives as of now. So yeah, like I said, we could update them through the commission process annually as well. It's just not a common occurrence, but the commission as of now is the one that approves any proposed changes to those objectives.
So that's one of the important points of this process. You remember we went and talked quite a bit about who the decision maker is that you are advising. And so there are constraints on what that decision maker can do. And so you want your recommendations to fall within those constraints so that you aren't asking FWP or the commission or whomever to do something they cannot do. Now, if you feel like there's this overall, we as Montanans need to do something differently, we can include that in the report. We can capture those feelings that, we need to rethink these things, but they wouldn't necessarily be part of the issue statement and the guiding principles. Okay. The other thing, Ed, about the objectives that you brought up, and that, the system is already set up to be flexible along those lines. Is there an alternative perspective?
I guess we had a little bit of that discussion in our group yesterday, so I can elaborate on it. I don't know if it's not necessarily a counterpoint, but I think that there are some of us that believe that having more regular review or opportunity to update objectives across the state is important to respond to changes that have occurred in the last 15 years in various parts of the state. So we don't want to end up in the same situation again, I suppose. And after hearing that, other states do have that flexibility within their framework. It seemed like it would be nice to advocate for something like that. And I recognize Ed's right that in season setting, the biologists have a lot of leeway in how harvest occurs, or the hunting framework for seasons, but it doesn't change the objectives in those districts.
Okay, thanks, Casey. Justin, I'm really not very good at seeing when people do the raise the hand icon, so if I don't pick that up very fast, just do this, okay? But it looks like you have something to weigh in with.
Yeah, I would, I guess I had a different perspective on the flexibility of those objectives that Ed pointed out. In my experiences, there's been very little flexibility. And I think what Dan alluded to about us potentially having a kind of a hard line in the sand about revisiting this topic every 5-7 years, I think would be wise. I know there's a unit right around us here that was 2 elk over objective this year. And that unit, stuck with the status quo on shoulder seasons and everything. And I guess in my mind, I thought 2 elk over looked a lot like at objective. And I think that statute that they're, Fish, Wildlife and Parks is required to, actively manage to get down to that objective. It seemed awful strict on an arbitrary number, I guess. So I haven't seen that flexibility in the process, I guess.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. Jessica, what's up?
Not much. So, I think flexibility is a great word, and I do think we need that. But a lot of this starts at the local level with the biologist. And in a perfect world, you get along great with your biologist and everything, goes along because you sit down and have discussions, and then they carry your wishes forward, and, things happen. But if you have a dysfunctional relationship with your biologist in your hunting districts, in your area, nothing good comes of that.
Okay.
So I don't know how, that's just a circumstance. I don't know how it fits into all of this, but.
Well, I think that's important. And so let me ask first whether other people have an alternative perspective on what you've heard so far about objectives. Okay, well, hearing none, first off, look what we just did. We listened to 4 different people share different perspectives on the same topic, and boom, now we know what the issue is. Okay, at least with those 4 people, we know where the differences are, and we are better able to say, all right, well, okay, there are concerns about objectives, and these are the concerns. All right, and we're not saying one is more important than the other, but what we're trying to do is capture those different perspectives. And so, to answer your question, Druska, it's like, how do we frame that in terms of an issue for the elk management plan? All right, well, that's something that you can work with your group members to get it to the point everybody's comfortable that, yeah, part of the issue is relationships between local biologists and the people that they work with. And what about that could fold into, the challenges of developing an elk management plan? Does that make sense?
I think it does, for sure. And I think that Druska is absolutely correct on that. And I think the way the system is set up is if the biologist and the local landowner don't have a good relationship, which clearly occurs on occasion, hopefully the commissioner steps in and, can work on that relationship and provide some liaison services between the landowner and the department and the biologist successfully. It doesn't always work, but I think that Druska's hit on a key point, that the success of the elk working group or the elk management plan really is dependent on strong relationships from the local biologist to the landowner, the sports person, to the commission, to the department, to the legislature. So it's the better those relationships are, the more effective we'll be.
I'd expand on that a little bit if I could, Mike.
Please.
I have quite a bit of experience in Wyoming, and yesterday the fellow from Wyoming talked about the goal they had of trying to reach 60% approval with all their landowners on their, I think it was when he was talking about objectives. And I would say that when we were in Wyoming, the biologists were very visible. They stopped and talked to us on the road. We saw them all the time. They came and helped us with stack yards, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think to Dan's point, and Justin and Druska, those relationships are pretty important. And I think you have to have that good relationship to move that forward.
I'm looking through all of the notes from yesterday, and I'm wondering, with discussion about the importance of relationships, is this something that we would want to look into putting into an issue statement, or maybe that swims into the guiding principles a little bit more? But I'm hearing that it's important to a lot of people to at least put on paper that this is a really important component of not only developing an elk management plan, but implementing it.
Well, I think that's a really good point, Carrie, because one of the things that we're going to talk about next are sort of strategic guiding principles that no matter what FWP does going forward with an elk management plan, we want them to think about. Okay. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but we call those, strategic. And so, you might say that a strategic principle or a strategic issue that doesn't really fit into developing an elk management program, but you want FWP to abide by anyway, would be, improved relationships. Okay. And we'll have a section or a place in the document that you're going to produce where you're going to say, look, no matter what, these are things that we think, no matter what FWP does with the elk management plan, these are things that we would like them to work on. Does that make sense? So when you are working, going forward, and you're working on your documents and you come across something, it's like, that sounds strategic to me, doesn't really fit in the issue statement, then just down below where you're working, make a record of it. And we'll keep track of those. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, Mike, one more for me.
Sure.
I noticed yesterday that working group 2 was the only one that mentioned technology, and I can't help but keep going back to that, you know, the increase in technology has really kind of come along all under this current elk management plan. And I keep thinking about how many of our long-term issues are continuing to get worse because of, you know, you look back when this came in 04 or 05, no one was running around the mountains with a GPS land ownership map, and, you know, no one was running around with a rangefinder. I mean, all that issue, I just wonder how much of it is increased technology is harboring these conflicts that we have with our elk management. And then that combined with a 11-week season, I think that's kind of an elephant in the room.
Okay. Other perspectives on that?
Yeah, this is Mark. We didn't really discuss that in our group, but I agree 100%.
You know, and this is Dan Ramon. I was on the commission when we went through the process of approving shoulder seasons. Oh, I'm muted on it. And, you know, it's pretty contentious, but the one thing that, you know, those of you that have studied the elk plan know that there is a provision in there where you're chronically over objective, that you're supposed to convert a district to cows only during the general season. And what we did find is that there was, I raised it a few times, it's a deeply unpopular prescription. And you know, even though we know it's the most effective way to shoot a lot of elk, that's one of those prescriptions within the elk management plan that the commission nor the department has ever been willing to implement, just because of how unpopular it is. So that's kind of how we came into shoulder seasons. And there's the tension there that, you know, we need to shoot cow elk. And, you know, for years we tried to do it during the 5-week season, and then we had to expand to shoulder seasons, and it has worked in certain degree in certain spots, but it hasn't worked everywhere. And it's still pretty contentious among sportsmen. So when you're looking at the prescriptions, you know, they're cow only during the general seasons there, but it's never been used.
Has anybody looked at this for putting it cows and 6-point or better to raise trophy bulls? Canada has been, British Columbia has been doing it right above us for ever since I've been in this area, over 20 years now. And it's working great for them. They can maintain their herd size and still allow people to get trophies.
Lindsay, that sounds like a Lindsay question. Did you get all of that?
I think I got all that. I think that's a fairly specific question. You know, for the most part here in Montana, we try and stick away from point restrictions, of course, with the notable exception for elk of brow tine bull only in many districts. And so, and then of course, for our trophy districts, like the Elkhorns, for example, where it's spikes only without that permit. So Patrick, here for our quote trophy units, if that's what you want to call them, for elk, we stick to limiting permits, and that's the tool we use, because when we get into 6-point or better, first of all, it becomes difficult for hunters to actually try and put 6 points on an individual animal. We don't create more complexity or difficulty, or, you know, create illegal people who are trying to do the right thing. So we just sort of have a different system, I guess. And I think that's a little bit of a specific question or tool for this purpose.
Yeah, I think you're right, Lindsay. So it was good to hear it out, but that is kind of really drilling down into the weeds at this point. So Pat, I'd ask you to just go ahead and stick a pin in that, and maybe we can hold on to it later or talk about it later. Druska, I'm willing to bet you have something to say because you've turned your mic on.
Oh, so this has just been rolling around in my head, and I feel like I'm a broken record about half the time anymore. But before we break out into small groups again and start working on these guiding principles and statements, I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood what it's like for a cattle producer in the designated surveillance area. So that was developed, it's been since 2011, probably 12. And it's been enlarged 5 times based on the elk research that they do when they find a positive elk. So it's not even a static line, it changes. When you are in the DSA, you are subjected to a whole set of regulations that no other cattle producer in the state has to abide by. So you have mandatory vaccination, you have change of ownership testing, and that sounds simple, except for if you're going to ship your sexually intact calves in the fall, either they go for feeders or they go for breeding animals. If they go for breeding animals, you have to test them. And anything you sell that is sexually intact gets bled. So, and that doesn't even talk about whole herd testing, which a lot of producers do either voluntarily or mandatorily. And that's a whole nother set of issues because running your cattle through just a blood test is a huge thing. Creates a lot of stress for the animal. You have to have extra help. Sometimes they get injured. I mean, there's a whole lot of ramifications from working your cattle like that. If you get a transmission, so they've gone away from whole herd depopulation, which is a good thing. But now if you get a transmission, you're put into immediate quarantine and you have to be in a test out situation, which can take which usually is around 6 to 7 months. And during that time, you are not allowed to sell anything. So think about that for a minute, that if you're in a business and most of these transmissions occur in the fall, which is when we get our one paycheck for the year. If you can't sell anything because you have a transmission, what do? Where's your working capital? What if you owe to the bank? I mean, it's a big thing if you can't sell. And when you have a transmission, they draw a circle around you a mile wide, and any other landowner, cattle producer in that circle also has to test. So sometimes if you have a transmission, your neighbors don't like you too much. So for a lot of landowners, especially in the DSA, there's almost a no tolerance zone for elk. And it's not because we don't value the animal for what it represents, but it's the threat. And so, you know, I go out in the mornings and I walk, and if I see elk in the wrong time of year, March, April, May, I almost get physically sick anymore because of the stress it causes and the potential that it brings. And there isn't any relief for us on that. You know, we do all the tools that we're allowed to use, but we still have elk. So you almost get this no tolerance feeling where you just don't want any elk ever anymore, no matter what. And I know that that's not realistic, but I just want to make
sure. Step in here, Druska? I apologize. What you're saying is really, really important. But I would also like to hear if there are any other alternative perspectives on this before we break out. Dan.
Mike, it's not necessarily an alternative perspective, but I think it's something that it's important that the group knows about, you know, in the area in particular where Druska's at. It's an area that's under objective for elk. So when we were talking yesterday about problematic concentrations or distribution of elk, that's a classic situation of that definition. It's not overpopulation. It is the fact that the elk are in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that causes serious problems for landowners like the Kinkies and other folks that are trying to make a living raising livestock at the DSA. Would you, I mean, so.
Okay.
Just to know it's not always the number of elk so much as the elk being in the wrong place at the wrong time and causing problems.
Other thoughts?
Justin has a message. Michael, if you want to read it.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Let's see. All right, Justin Schaff. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Okay. Question for Druska or Dan. What can be done? I think we are all very receptive to the issues that producers face in surveillance areas. What are some ways we can address that, and what have we tried? Before we get into that, that's something I'd like to stick a pin in. We're going to be addressing or getting closer to solutions when we deal with the guiding principles. So I think the important thing now is to just recognize what Druska is saying. It's a serious issue that needs to be considered in the elk management plan. Other thoughts? Okay, who wants to do small groups? Raise your hand. Okay, I'll consider that a distinct minority. That means go ahead. So what we're going to do is break out into small groups. It's going to have different membership than before. We're going to keep randomizing. And I asked you last night to look through the documents from yesterday, kind of pick a favorite one that you feel like not perfect, not ready for prime time, but one that you feel like you can add things to and subtract things from to start working towards what you want to see as a group. Lindsay, did you have something?
Nope. Will you just make me a co-host before you split us up, please?
Oh, I'm a host now. All right. Okay, are we good on that? All right, so let me set up the breakout rooms. Any questions about what we want to accomplish in the breakout groups? Again, I think we have really good bones in these issue statements. Let's put some flesh on them, and let's be as specific as we can about the issues, not necessarily examples of where something's an issue, but let's be specific about what the problems really are that make this difficult going forward. So.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, sorry if everyone understands this and I don't, you want us to pick one of the plans and in our group workshop it?
That's up to you. I mean, you can say,
Okay.
I don't like any of these and start from scratch. Okay. Sometimes it's just more efficient to say, well, this one's kind of going in the right direction, so let's work on it. Okay. And
hey, Mike, how much time do we have?
Well, yesterday, folks said 30 minutes wasn't enough. Is that the consensus?
Yesterday it was, but I feel today we have a better foundation and kind of know where we're going. I think 30 minutes will be sufficient.
You think 30 will be? Okay.
I personally do, just because we have something to go with already. We can kind of refine it.
What do other folks think?
I'm
Good to
fine.
go with 30? Okay, I got 30 minutes set up. You'll automatically pop back into the main room and you'll get a 2-minute warning. I would rather give you 5, but apparently that's not an option. So are we ready to go? Okay, I'm gonna magically transport you now. Pat, I don't have you magically transported anywhere.
I don't need to be.
No, not you. The other Pat. We got two Pats now.
Do I hit join?
Yes, please do.
I'm a little computer.
Okay, because I hit later on mine, so.
Yeah, we're good.
Hey, Mike. We only have 2 of the working group members in group 2 for some reason.
Yeah, who should I move, you think?
I can't see the list while I'm in this main room, but give them someone else because they're stuck with like Justin and Ken.
Okay, I'm going to move. Hope nobody gets upset about this. She's not gonna. No, I'm not gonna do that to her. I'll move Joel. He'll be to 2.
Thanks.
Hey, Ren, did we lose you? Did we lose you?
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
my computer completely glitched out, so I'm not sure what was going on.
Okay. We've got 2 minutes. What room were you in?
I was with, there's Everett. I was with Everett and Marcus, and I don't know.
Okay, looks like our people. Everett, did you leave the room or did you get popped out?
Sorry, I left it. I clicked on leave the room.
Okay. Had enough, huh?
We had 2 seconds left.
Okay, looks like other people are popping back out.
Mike, we told you we needed an hour.
30 minutes was not enough.
Gee, who'd have thought?
Next time, maybe you'll listen to us.
Yeah, right. Well, that's my bad.
Ren, we needed you. We lost you like right away in the beginning. We needed your input.
Oh, no.
We didn't get very far.
Well, let's talk about that. And shoot, I would like to send you back to the same groups and not randomize. Sarah, would you mind seeing if we can reconstruct who the groups are right now?
That would require memory, right?
No, let's go to, so here we go. So we've got Marcus, Carrie, Everett, and Ren.
Uh-oh.
And then in the other group, Dan, Druska, Ed.
Mike, unfortunately, I don't think I can send people to breakout rooms.
I know, I just want you to write these down for now.
Oh, okay, just a sec. Let me get ready for that. Okay.
The other one, we had Joel, Justin, Mark, and Patrick. And the last one should be Allie, Casey, Kevin, and that ought to do it.
You'll have to go through the first 2 again.
Okay. They were. Okay. Everett, Carrie, and Marcus. And then Dan, Druska, and Ed. Does that account for everybody?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay. It looks like we've got everybody back. So talk to me, folks. What do you think about what you got done in this last one?
Well, I would say group 1, Druska, Ed, and I put together a statement that's we think is pretty coherent and hopefully hits all the high spots.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Another group?
We didn't get a lot done. We
Okay.
struggled for the first 15 minutes or so. It seemed
What
like.
was the source of the struggle?
I think we took a little bit to catch Patrick up from yesterday. I think we were nailing down some what the elk management plan is going to address, and then we were starting to hit our stride, but it ran out of time.
Yeah, well, that's because I wasn't listening, and everybody said 30 minutes wasn't enough. Okay, let's see, another group.
I thought that we spent a little bit of time just figuring out what exactly, how specific we're supposed to be on some stuff still. So I think we got, we got some good stuff done, but I think there was still a little bit of confusion.
That's all right. I spend my life like that. Last group.
We didn't make it very far either. we dug into what is the true issue versus the solution or a path to the solution.
Yeah, and that's, I think I mentioned it to your group, that's just normal. It's really hard for us to think about the problem without starting to think about the solutions. And we really don't want to do that yet because it kind of puts us in a box, because now we have the solution that we can imagine, therefore we have to define the problem this way. And so as much as possible, we want to steer away from trying to solve the problem now. We're just trying to understand it thoroughly. As far as how specific to get, you could say, for example, there are strongly differing perspectives on elk management. Landowners are concerned about problematic damage caused by elk and the potential for transmitting brucellosis to their cattle. Now, there could be more in there, but all right, now we have said, here's the problem for landowners. Okay, sportsmen are concerned that, all right, they want to have access on public lands. They want to have adequate opportunity, things like that. And so, you know, where you have disagreement or disagreements about stakeholders, you don't have to say that, well, landowners and hunters are arguing. We just have to say, here's the perspective of the landowners. Here's the perspective of the hunters. Okay? But just so long as we're capturing that. And do you see how that's different from stakeholders disagree? You see that? Does that make sense?
I do see that. I guess I felt like if we were even saying just landowners and hunters this, that would be one thing, and then we'd end up listing 15 things that landowners and hunters specifically might disagree on.
Yeah, and so that's something, judgment of the group. You're not going to be able to solve every little problem about elk management with one document. You know, it's like folks have been saying, you're going to need to have the flexibility in that document to address specific problems that might come up. So your job isn't to define everything. Your job is to say, here are the big issues. All right. And then maybe you can talk about being flexible to address some of the smaller issues. So yeah, you know, if you think about this, where there has been disagreement about elk management, what is the stuff you're hearing most of? You know, what are the big things? Joel, you're scowling like I'm just absolutely full of it. So.
No, I don't. Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Uh-uh. No. Oh, there you go. What's that?
I don't think you're crazy. Yeah, I was just thinking real hard.
Okay, no, I do that too. I can always tell when I'm being very confusing because I can look at Justin Goody's face, and he's not showing it right now, but he has the Mike, you're confusing me face that tells me every single time. So if I misread your facial expression, just let me know. Other thoughts? Yeah, Casey.
Can you can we revisit where we're supposed to be ending up at the end of this process?
Absolutely.
And I feel like, you know, we're focused on defining an issue statement, and we know we're going to guiding principles yet next. And the examples that we looked at with the Lions and the other structured decision making I've been involved with, it was very clear what we were trying to solve. And where are we going to try to end up? Is it a recommendation to the department on the planning process itself? So is it, what are we trying to distill?
Okay. I'm going to share my screen with you real quick. In just a sec. Okay, can everybody see this slide from earlier? So what you see there, all going all the way around, are these different steps of decision making. And depending on what the group is being asked to do, you don't have, you know, you can go part way, all the way, whatever. So this group has been asked to come up with guiding principles for FWP to develop an elk management program. So we're just focusing on these two steps. So first step is just the issue that a good elk management plan should try to address. Okay. The guiding principles are like, well, here's what success would look like. All right. These are the things that you want FWP to consider as they develop a successful elk management program. Okay. So if you think back to the house example, that I gave you at one point, you know, where you had this couple talking about, well, you know, we're outgrowing our house. These are the things that we need. In fact, I might have that here. Let me see. Yeah. So this is the issue statement for this couple that are thinking about, you know, well, we need to do something about our circumstances. And so it's laying out all the things that are issues as they consider this. All right. Their house is too small. They need more living space. They want a bigger yard, commute time, and all that kind of stuff. These are the issues they are trying to resolve as they go forward. The guiding principles are, well, okay, if we solved those issues perfectly, all right, our house would be large enough. The yard would be large enough. Schools would be of high quality. All right, now, you know, there's no such thing as a house that satisfies all of those principles. But if you lay out what success looks like, it allows you to be able to say, yeah, we really nailed it on that one. We're having to compromise on this one, or what we're doing now really fails on that particular one. What can we do better? So that's what this group, as I understand it, is being asked to produce, are these guiding principles about what an elk management plan would accomplish, given our understanding of the issues involved in elk management in Montana.
That helps, Mike. I don't know how I missed that along the way, that's where we were stopping, but that makes sense. So I mean, I feel like it's not that we have an easy task at hand, but we just want to make sure that all of the concerns for the stakeholder interest in elk management are incorporated into our issue statement and the approach that the department should be taking in trying to address those. So I actually feel like we have all the voices at the table, and we just need to be working toward trying to articulate them.
Yeah, well, you said it better than I did. So yeah, I think you're right. Other folks, what do you think?
I was way off, Mike, when I thought a half hour would be plenty of time. I apologize.
Well, actually, you know, with other groups putting time constraints, you know, really tight time constraints, kind of forces people to be efficient in their discussions, but you guys are already rocking it. So I don't feel like we have to do that. So how much more time do you want? Let's go back and finish the things that you were thinking and maybe incorporate some of the stuff that you've heard since we came back out.
With the same group we were just with?
Well, Dan, if I understand you correctly, you guys felt like you got to a pretty good place. Is that correct?
I think so. Druska and Ed may disagree, but I thought we did.
Druska and Ed, what do you think? Ed, you're muted.
I thought we did well.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Let's stay in the same group.
Okay. How about since you guys have gotten to a point you're comfortable with, how about I put you in with the other groups so that you can share some of the things that you thought worked well in yours? Is that okay?
Sure.
Oh, whatever.
Whatever. I understand. Okay. You want another half hour? I mean, we've got hey, Lindsay.
Yeah.
You said we needed to stop by 11.
We need to switch meetings around 11. Yep, because we have to get into a webinar so that we can take public comment by 11:30.
Okay.
That transition is going to take a few minutes just to stop this meeting, start a new one, and then start streaming it again. So we want to give plenty of time for that.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to pop you guys out to 3 different breakout rooms. I'm going to try to make sure we have everybody in the same group as before. Sarah, do you have the ability to assign, assign breakout rooms?
No, I don't believe I do, but I just sent you a text, Mike, through the chat with everyone's.
Okay. So here we go. And I'll pop you guys out at about 11. All right.
So Mike, is there a way for them to pull up what our group did in these breakout groups? I mean,
That's a
share
good
screen or whatever?
If the 3 members of your group have a copy of what you did, and then you can share the results from that with the group, just talking about it, let's give that a try.
Sarah, I think you've got the only copy. Maybe you could email it to Ed, Druska, and I.
I am not sure.
Or was it Lindsay that was recording it? I can't remember who was recording it.
Lindsay,
Yeah, so Lindsay could send it to everyone right now through the chat, I think, and then everyone could look at it on their screens. Might be the easiest way to do that.
Okay.
Okay, bear with me a moment as I get the same room signed up.
Mike, I think I might need to send this before you split everybody up. Otherwise, I don't know if they can get it.
You tell me when to do it. I promise not to do anything until then.
Sorry, I have to find it really quick.
Ours is probably still too long.
Okay, I sent it. If you guys can see it. Oh, it says network disconnected. I don't know. Give me a sec.
Sarah, I haven't gotten that text, so go ahead and just for that, pick a group, any group, but give me the names for a group.
All right, Everett, Carrie, Marcus, and Ren. You guys correct me if I wrote these down wrong.
Everett, Carrie, Marcus, and Ren. Cool. Okay. Give me the name of another group, please.
Joel, Justin, Mark, and Pat.
Joel, Justin, Mark, where are you? And who?
Pat.
Pat. Okay, and
Allie, Casey, and Kevin.
Okay, and then for the FWP people, I'm just going to stick you in. I don't know if it's going to be the same group as you were in before.
Did you catch Allie's chat question?
No, I did not. Just a second.
I was just saying maybe we could just all look at it together also.
Oh, we will. I promise.
Okay.
We'll get to
I
that
just
point.
thought it might help our group more, but that's fine.
Okay, yeah, we'll get to that point, and I think you guys are closing in on it. So, okay, this ought to get it done.
Mike,
So,
real quick, did you get Dan, Dreska, and Ed added to?
yeah, I did.
Well, and then was there anyone here that wasn't included on that set of names I just read out?
Okay, I'm going to push the magic button, and if something goes wrong, just tell me. See you guys in a few.
Hi, Martha. We'll be coming back from breakout rooms in just a few minutes here.
That's great. I just wanted to make sure I'm on ahead of time to hear the public comment. And
Right. Yes, and I think we're switching to that as soon as we come back from breakout rooms to the other webinar format.
Martha?
Yes.
I want to check, Martha, this is Pat. I'm going to check to see if you were one of the people that I sent an invite to for the webinar.
I don't need to be. I just want to make sure I can hear the public comment.
Well, it'll be out on YouTube.
Ahead of time to hear the public comment.
Great. Yes, and I think we're
Because it's not going to be this meeting. It's going to actually be a webinar. So we're closing this meeting to go out to a webinar, and then that'll be broadcast, and that's what the public's going to dial in on.
Did I miss something?
No, you popped out.
Okay. Are we on a break then?
Well, now we got the public comment period coming up. So let's see what
Okay.
Lindsay wants to do. That looks like everybody. Welcome back to Unreality. Lindsay, what should we do now for public comment?
Yeah, okay. So now we are going to go back to use that link that Pat sent you that I asked you to keep a hold of. So Mike, are we ready for maybe a 10-minute break anyways?
Yeah, totally up to you. This is your show right now.
Yeah, so let's plan on being back on the new meeting with that new link that Pat sent you around 11:20. And then that way any members of the public can also log on around 11:20. Maybe in that 10 minutes that we're waiting from 11:20 to 11:30, we can do quick updates on these last three groups. And then we will take public comment at 11:30. So go ahead and log back into the meeting link that Pat sent you, and we will resume at 11:20.
So I missed something, Lindsay. You said that we were going to do something with the groups starting at 11:20.
I was just thinking maybe we could do a quick update because the public has not been seeing any of the breakout rooms. So we could give an update on where each one of them landed maybe.
Okay, on the webinar?
Yep.
Okay, all right.